Hello everyone and welcome to Eorzea Armoire, a series about the background of some of Heidelberg's more epic and dense weapons, armor, and artifacts. We'll be investigating the lore of these items both within Final Fantasy XIV and the Final Fantasy franchise in general, as well as the amazing and sometimes obscure real-world people, events, and artifacts upon which they are based. There once was a far eastern smithy, well versed in making blades pretty. Far thicker than most, oh his dagger he'd boast, and its thrust was well known in the city. Geralt tells us through the relic questline of how a far eastern ninja named Sasuke brought ninjutsu to Doma, training poor common folk so that they could overthrow the local tyrant. When they did so, they found a pair of Yoshimitsu in his vaults, and after building themselves a hidden village in the Doman Outlands, they perpetuated both the teaching of ninjutsu and the forging of Yoshimitsu, named for the original smith in the rhyme which Geralt recites, right up to the rise of the Gallian Empire and the Doman flight to Eorzea. We will of course be talking in a future installment in great length about the Sasuke Inari Shrine, site of the hidden village of Kamakura, as well as the folklore figure of Sarutobi Sasuke, but today we're focusing on the Yoshimitsu. Yoshimitsu is a fairly common name throughout Japanese history, and it's quite likely that the name refers in part to a community joke around the time that the ninja job was announced that the relic should be named after Yoshida. Most people will also be familiar with the Samurai Yoshimitsu featured throughout Namco's Tekken and Soul Calibur series, which anchored the name and general concept of this character in gaming culture. There are, however, two particular historical figures to whom I believe our daggers pay homage: Minamoto no Yoshimitsu and Ashikaga Yoshimitsu. The Minamoto clan was prominent during the last centuries of the Heian period and established the first Kamakura shogunate after defeating the Taira clan that dominated the imperial court in 1185. Minamoto no Yoshimitsu was a brother of Yoshie, or Hachimantaro, a legendary figure that typified the martial prowess of the samurai. Yoshimitsu himself became recognized during the 20th century as the ancient patron of Daito Ryu Jujutsu, a martial art founded by Takeda Sokaku that would inspire the later arts of Aikido and Hapkido. This Yoshimitsu was somewhat notorious for dissecting the corpses of men he killed in battle, in order to study them and devise techniques for percussive atemi and joint locks. Although atemi-based martial arts, those using empty-handed strikes, were not commonly practiced during the large-scale battles of the medieval periods of Japan due to the permeation of armored opponents, they were developed as a means for disarming opponents if the samurai was to lose his own weapon during combat. The incredible focus and precision of the techniques developed by Minamoto no Yoshimitsu has earned him recognition as one of the fathers of modern Japanese martial art. The second Yoshimitsu of whom I would like to speak was a shogun of the Ashikaga through the latter decades of the 14th century. He is credited with ushering a cultural renaissance by consolidating and stabilizing the Ashikaga shogunate, ending the fighting between the northern and southern courts, re-establishing trade with China, enabling Zen monks to reach prominent positions in government, and constructing a number of amazing and iconic temples and palaces, including the Golden Pavilion in Kyoto. He was also a patron of Noh theatre, particularly a patron and supposed lover of Zeami Motokiyu, who wrote several dozen plays and a collection of treatises regarding the philosophy of drama during this period. To give some context to people unfamiliar with the name, Zeami Motokiyu is considered by many to be a kind of Japanese Shakespeare, or at least a Christopher Marlowe. So our Orthard Yoshimitsu have quite a binary legacy, named for both a Minamoto master of precision in violence and death, as well as an Ashikaga leader of peace, prosperity, and performance arts. Firstly, this ties in very neatly with the overarching theme of the relic weapons, which I've referred to a number of times throughout this series. Their pregnancy, their potential, and their focus on player agency to give them notoriety and power. Specifically, the Yoshimitsu are capable of becoming instruments of creativity on one hand, or of creative murder on the other. Like many of our other relics, these allude to the characteristics and actions of the individual wielder giving the weapon power and fame, and in a particularly non-deterministic manner, unlike the reverse that we may or may not find the Excalibur to produce, for instance. Despite the different outcomes that might come from these daggers expressing either the Minamoto or the Ashikaga Yoshimitsu, they are not mutually exclusive illusions. Japanese culture often poetically conflates art and violence, and the martial arts inspired by Minamoto no Yoshimitsu are notable for their dance-like fluidity and rhythm. Despite being motivated by efficiency and subtlety, it is not difficult to compare any Japanese martial art with Noh theatre, requiring similar and overlapping skills in self-discipline, balance, and focus. Furthermore, each have been founded on the same aesthetic and philosophical principles and have formed over the centuries in close reference to one another. Similarly, the brand of ninjutsu practiced by the domans, whilst focused on dexterity and precision, also flows in very much the same way. Unlike the condition of the dragoon at release, weaving skills for the ninja feels incredibly natural. Even the mudras can be threaded in between global cooldowns, skill and latency allowing, without losing pace or clipping animations. The lack of positional requirements and the speed of attacks give a sense of freedom not entirely granted to the other melee classes. Even as the skills of the rotation appear to involve strenuous flourish, they are also more efficient in exertion compared to fellow melee fighters if the comparatively low TP costs are any indication. So the Eorzea ninja achieves a poetic grace and flourish in movement, but one that miraculously produces zero redundancies. As Geralt notes, the folded steel of the blades gives them a thickness and hardness which allows them to pierce armor as effortlessly as cloth. The pragmatic Yoshimitsu of war and of culture find a perfect balance in their domain representations and show that even in Eorzea, ninjutsu is a dispassionate discipline of balance, neutral in its essence, and unlike the other disciplines of war and magic, it leans on naught but the wielder's own presence of mind for its devastating effectiveness. Now, I'm no authority on Japanese history, but I'm sure we could spend all day talking about the Minamoto and Ashikaga Yoshimitsu, and I'd love to hear your thoughts below, but that's all we have time for today. Feel free to share this video with your Yoshimitsu-wielding friends, hit the sub and like buttons if you're enjoying this series, and please check out the rest of my channel for plenty of Final Fantasy XIV lore and analysis. Feel free to make requests for this series or for any of the others. Follow me on Twitter and all that, but until next time, thank you so much for watching and supporting the channel. I'm Ethys, and this is Eorzea Armoire.